Hi, and welcome back to the Mom and Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kat, and this is another episode of Behind the Sessions, where I take a little bit of time to talk about the things that I hear in therapy sessions and the things that people bring to therapy in general. One of those things is how much pressure there is in the new year. And in the last Behind the Sessions episode, I discussed the exhaustion that happens at the end of the year with all of the holiday everything, and definitely how people can feel burnt out and all of those things. And typically, with any new year, regardless of the culture you're in or when your culture celebrates the new year, there is often a look towards, the future, of course. You're starting something new. The new year, of course, time hasn't stopped and started. It's a new year, but it is a continuous time as well. However, it's a natural point of reflection. Looking back, seeing what you did or didn't accomplish this year, whether you had goals or not, and what you might like to accomplish in the coming year, whether you make them goals or not. Just reflection. And I have my own example of that. I was recently in a space where I could hear somebody's conversation, and they were talking about setting up their goals for the next 12 months, like goals per month for the next 12 months. And I had this moment of like, am I supposed to be doing that? Is that something I should do? I guess, it was one of those moments where it kind of caught me in a moment of, caught me off guard a little bit in the sense that I hadn't really been in that headspace to be thinking about, planning ahead at that level of detail. And I think this happens for a lot of us where we hear something somebody's saying and you have a moment where you like kind of reflect and think, oh, am I supposed to be doing what they're doing? Is that the right thing to do? And that kind of pressure is just always present in the new year. You might be hearing how other people are planning their quarterly goals or for what they want to do for the year, and then feel pressure to be doing those things yourself. For me, thankfully, I had was able to do a second self reflection and think, is that something I actually want to do? And the answer to that was no. So I'm not going to be planning out my life every month for the next 12 months. That sounds rough. I won't be doing that. But that in and of itself helped me to clarify what works for me right now. And that wouldn't work for me right now. And that is really important to keep in context, that whatever somebody else is doing with their plans in their life might be super great for them, and it might not work for you. It might not be your flow. It might not be what is available to you. Your life might be in an unpredictable type of a place, or there's a lot of transition in your life, and you can't, plan out to that level of detail. Again, you do not have to do that. That's what worked for that person. So I just want to talk with you a little bit and create a little bit of space for you to reflect, if you can and if you want to, on what some of the pressures you might be feeling are, and thinking about ways for yourself that you might be able to manage those. And I'll give you a couple of thoughts on how you might be able to do that. So, of course, the tried and true New Year propaganda is the New Year, New You messaging that comes in from all kinds of places. That is so much in the messaging that we hear, and it can apply to lots of different things. So for sure, we hear this around weight loss, fitness, dieting, changing those kinds of lifestyle habits, setting goals for yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be around weight loss. It could be around, this year I'm going to be super productive. I'm going to really work hard on, you name it. But for a lot of people that I meet with, the pressure is to, be a better parent. And again, it's not that you shouldn't have a goal or work towards that or be working on things. I'm really talking about the pressures that come with these things that are maybe a kind of a battle that you are having internally, meaning in your own thoughts and in your own heart around what you should be doing as a parent, as a mom. And it might not even be that anybody specifically put a pressure on you or set an expectation for you out loud. It could be just what you're absorbing from social media or shows on TV or what you see, from people around you. For instance, that could be like planning activities for your kids that are, like you saw your neighbor do, or having the perfect routine so that nobody's ever upset in the morning while getting out to school, or telling yourself that you should be balancing working and motherhood equally and that somehow you're not doing the right thing. So there's some sort of balance out there that you're going to find and you're supposed to find it. I mean, at the core of some of this, if it's hitting you in just the right way, it's basically you feeling inadequate, and that you should be doing better at something. It's not often that it's coming from a place of like, this is something that I'm interested in improving or looking into, or reflecting on or expanding my understanding about. It usually comes with some sort of judgmental undertone, that we're not doing enough, that we're inadequate in some way. And if any of these illustrations or explanations I'm giving resonate for you, specifically if it feels like you're coming from a place of feeling not good enough or inadequacy, so you need to change, your body, your productivity, your routines, your parenting. If it's coming from a place that feels like that, it's also inherently coming from a place of some kind of shame or internalized shame. And shame is not a great motivator. I'll just put it that way. It's at least not a sustainable motivator. It can get people up and out for a little bit and doing things differently for a little bit. But ultimately, if you're feeling inadequate and you're trying to be not inadequate, or you're trying to reach some level of perfection, or do something to a certain standard, and you don't get to that point in as quick a time as you think you should, or as good as you should, or whatever, all of the shoulds, then you're kind of back to square one. Except now you also have the added super fun bonus of feeling bad about yourself about that now too. So if you're somebody who is on social media and you are like scrolling through Instagram, looking at posts, reels, and stories, whatever the name of the thing on the platform that you look at is, if you get a twinge of that feeling like not good enough, feeling inadequate, feeling like, oh, I should be doing what they're doing, I just invite you to pause. Just pause for a second, and notice that it's having that impact on you. Because there might be additional pressure that since it is the new year, that you should be doing more. You should be doing those things. In addition to other times when you already feel like you should be doing those things. What I find is really challenging for folks is that, like, let's say you have a goal to be more patient. Be more patient with your kids. Be more patient with your partner. Well, that's a great thought. That's a great idea. Everybody wants to be a little bit more patient. But being more patient without looking at the context of the reasons why you might not feel patient, is a little bit of a trap, because you can go into like, okay, I'm going to have a goal to be more patient and maybe not yell or maybe not snap at the kids. But what are the things you're dealing with that are putting you in a position to be less patient, anyways? So let's say you have job stress, or you're dealing with depression or anxiety or some kind of other mental health challenge, or there was a loss in the family, or that you had a recent injury, or somebody in the family had a recent injury, or somebody's traveling, so you have more work to do, more on your plate. If you look at your goals out of context, a goal like to be more patient, out of the context of the things that are making it hard for you to be patient, then when you lose your patience, you're going to just kind of be mad at yourself all over again. As opposed to, like, if you're looking at the context of the things that are impacting you, maybe you'll have a little bit more compassion for yourself. Um, Ideally, maybe you can have less pressure on yourself. So it might not necessarily result in you being more outwardly patient, but being more patient with yourself internally is a start in that direction. Sometimes the pressures in the new year can come from other people, though. It can come from family, it can come from culture, it can come from your community in ways that that maybe like involve other people as well, even people in your immediate family or extended family. Like maybe you've decided that this year you're gonna meal prep every meal, every for every meal of the week. Every Sunday, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to buy all of the things that I need. I'm going to have a menu picked out, and I'm going to cook every day all of this food that I've meal prepped. Well, sure, that's lovely. That would be amazing if that could happen. But again, what is the context of life? Does it support that goal? Does it support your ability or capacity to do that? Not because you are unable, but because life is happening and you can't do all of that in a vacuum. And then that pressure, like if you've talked with your spouse or partner or a family member about this goal, if you've come up with that goal together as a family to do, and now you have pressure to uphold your end of that, but it's not actually feasible in your real day to day life pressures, then it can feel like you're also now letting down somebody else. So far, all roads lead back to feeling bad. If things are not sustainable, or if you feel like you're failing at all of these goals. So I've already listed one of the ways to cope with this, and that is self-compassion. I don't know of anybody who has set a bunch of goals for themselves, done them all exactly how they thought they were going to, in the timeline that they thought they were going to, and with nothing happening to derail them or complicate things or get in the way of that. But sometimes we set our goals, our resolutions, whatever you want to call them, with the idea that it's going to be a straight shot. We're going to start here at A, we're going to do steps B, C, D, and E, and then, whatever, we end up at Z and everything went really well. Of course, it would be amazing if that happened. It's just not how it happens. So that can get more difficult and more cumbersome when there are really big goals that are very complex or have multiple steps or require drastic overhauls. What tends to be easier is when you can set goals are a little bit more based in the contextual reality that you have, how much time you actually have to do the thing, and make small, meaningful changes. So, to take that meal prep idea, for instance, okay, so maybe you can't actually make a full menu, go to the grocery store, prep everything for a full week for the rest of your life. Maybe once a week you can meal prep. Or maybe you can just set a hopeful menu or a list of 5 things you might want to make that week, or something that feels a little bit more manageable. And then if that works out, if you do some trial and error, if you test out your hope here that and see that it works, then you can build on that. But if you start off with it's got to be this way every day for always, then yeah, it's going to feel bad when that doesn't happen because that's life. Life does happen and kind of disrupts the flow of things sometimes. So if you can instead, for this example, of meal prepping, pare it down, dial it back a little bit, and see what might be a manageable first step. Not that you can't have a goal to sometime get to that point, but like right out the gate, it's a little bit of a setup because it's high demand, and you haven't had time to test out if this particular example of meal prep is really going to work. But you can use that kind of template to think through other things that you want to do. Small, meaningful change, manageable, something that you can incorporate a little more easily into your day or into your week, that you have some likelihood of success. Because if you can have a little bit of success, you can build on that, and you can build your sense of capacity to be able to do that. And just to reiterate about self-compassion, it is really okay to acknowledge that that we are going to fall short sometimes, that we are going to need breaks, and that rest can be a part of your goals. That can be a part of the thing that you want to work on. It doesn't mean having a goal doesn't need to mean that you are pushing yourself into productivity. It doesn't need to mean that you are doing. It can mean that you can take a step back. Maybe like, hey, I actually don't want to have goals right now. That's okay. You don't have to. This is about getting like a temperature check on how you're doing, where you're at, like what you can actually do, and testing that out. And if you feel like rest is the thing that you need when you check in with yourself, then awesome. That's the thing. That can be part of your goals. And lastly, wherever possible, when you can limit the comparison game, the better off you will be. And if the comparison is happening for you on social media, then that might mean limiting the amount of time that you're on, setting an alarm or an alert on your phone when you've reached an hour or something like that, to just have you take a step back so that you're not in the soup of comparing yourself to other people all of the time. If that comparison is happening within groups of people at work or in your community groups, in your social groups, if you find that you are comparing yourself to somebody else, first know that you are quite possibly comparing the kind of worst parts you feel about yourself to the best parts that you see in somebody else, or what you value about somebody else or what you think they're doing. We're not usually comparing like apples to apples. There's I remember, as an example, I remember when I was younger, I'm thinking of like 2000s, when maybe 90s, 2000s, when like supermodel game was strong. So when I was younger at that time, there was this ideal sort of body type out there, and the model and the Victoria's Secret, angels, that was this model of what you're quote unquote supposed to look like, or what the perfect person looks like, perfect woman, all that other BS. And I don't know if honestly, if I realized this on my own or I read it somewhere or what happened, but the realization that like, oh, I will never look like that because my body's not even built like that. I'm 5'2.5" on a good day. And that's not how tall I'm ever going to be. And that's not how my hips are. That's not how my shoulders are. Whatever it was, the kind of realization that I was comparing myself to somebody else as if we were like, the same build, the same height, the same hair color, the same skin color, same, all of these other things. Like, I'm not going to look like that person. And to be honest, there is a lot of freedom in that. There's a lot of relief in that. Like, oh, okay, great. I don't have to compare myself to, that supermodel. Because first of all, it's not a fair comparison. These people are like, that's their job, number one. Two, if it's on a magazine, there's all kinds of airbrushing happening in those days, and possibly still is. But the point being, the real point I'm trying to hit home is we're not comparing the same thing. And man, those societal pressures that like that person, that skin tone, that height, that weight is somehow what I'm supposed to be like. No, we're not doing that. And so like being able to catch yourself in those moments where you're comparing, somebody else's parenting to your parenting. I was like, oh, they handled that situation really well. I should be doing what they're doing. Well, maybe what they're doing doesn't work for your kid. Maybe that doesn't work for you. I just am inviting you to take a minute, a step back, that if you find yourself doing some comparison, ask yourself what you're comparing. Ask yourself what is loaded in that comparison already. That does take a bit of reflection. You're not going to sit there and write an essay on, all of the ways in which society has queued you up and top loaded you into thinking everybody's, that other people are better than you. But it's just a way to cope when you feel like that comparison game is taking over. So I hope that reflection was useful for you. Take what works for you, leave what doesn't. My approach might work for you and my approach might not work for you, or bits and pieces might work and other parts might not. Even in listening to what I'm talking about and to this podcast and to people's stories, there are going to be things that work for you and things that don't work for you. And if possible, if we can get away from the narrative of feeling inadequate, being like not good enough, you are good enough. You are already doing a good job by showing up when you can and how you can, and it does not have to be perfect. I think it is high time we throw out the word even perfection and motherhood, perfection and parenting. It does not exist. And if you can give yourself a little bit of permission to be human, and to if you can allow yourself to give yourself a little bit of self-compassion, that can go a long way in managing this transition into the new year and setting yourself up so that you don't feel like you're going to disappoint yourself, but setting yourself up so that you feel like you can have something that is manageable, achievable, and that can make you feel a little bit better. And if you don't want to have any goals right now, that's okay too. All right, well, that'll do it for me for now. We have a full year of episodes coming up for you, and I just want to take a moment to reflect and thank you who have been listening, who have been sharing these episodes with people, who have left a review on your favorite podcast platform, who have left a star review. All of those things really help and support the podcast. It helps people to know that this exists. It helps people to know that this is a resource that is available to them. And I invite you to continue listening. If you haven't yet subscribed or followed, or if you haven't yet left a review or a star rating, I would really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Thank you so much for being with me today. Until next time.